Okay, this chapter is a female reproductive system. First, we're going to see the reproductive anatomy. As you can see in there, it says sexual differentiation, obviously, because males and females are different. So let's take a look at the different organs in the female reproductive system. We have right here the vagina. This is the uterus, the fallopian tube, and the ovaries. These are internal organs. External, we have labia majora, labia minora, clitoris, mons pubis, and don't forget, if you look in the figurine here, that also the breasts are part of the female reproductive system. If you scroll down, we see the ovaries, and this is a ovary being cut in the middle, right? And you can see in there that you have these structures called the primordial follicles. Eventually, one of these primordial follicles every month is going to turn into an ovule, and it's going to be ovulated. The parts of the ovule that remains inside are going to continue inside the ovary, and it's going to turn into the corpus luteum and corpus albicans. This is very important for you to remember because we're going to see this later on. So in the ovaries, you have the external part is the cortex. The middle is going to be the medulla. Let's keep scrolling down. And next, we are going to see the vagina right here, which is a tube, right? That serves for the menstrual period to come out, also for the baby to come out, and it serves as it holds the penis as well as the semen. Right here, we have the uterus. The uterus has the bottom, which is going to be the cervix. The top is the fundus, and the middle is going to be the body. The body has three layers. The outside is the perimetrium, the middle is the myometrium, the inside is the endometrium. After the uterus, we have the fallopian tube, which is this part right here. The fallopian tube has the fimbriae, the infundibulum right here, ampulla, and then the isthmus. When the ovule gets ovulated, the fimbriae captures the ovule, and the ovule travels through the fallopian tube into the uterus. That is possible because the fallopian tube has cells that contain cilia, and these cilia are going to push the ovule into the tube and then into the uterus. In addition to that, very important to consider is that all these structures are in the pelvic area and they are held in place by the ligaments, such as, for example, suspensory ligament, round ligament, broad ligament, cardinal ligament, and uterosacral ligament. In addition to that, we have right here another ligament, which is going to be the ovarian ligament. There are some membranes, such as the mesosalpinx right here, as well as the mesometrium right here. Okay. We continue scrolling down. We see a real picture of the uterus as well as the fallopian tubes and part of the ligaments. And we scroll down, uterine tubes, as I was telling you, there are cells with cilia, which is this you can see right here in yellow. So we keep scrolling down. The uterus, we said it has three layers, perimetrium, endometrium, and myometrium, and the structures that you're going to have in the uterus are going to be cervix, fundus, as well as body. We already mentioned that, and don't forget also the ligaments that are going to help us maintain these structures inside the pelvic area, such as the broad ligament, uterosacral ligament, round and cardinal ligament. Blood supply to the uterus is given to by the uterine artery. Okay, and not only that, but also there's going to be an ovarian artery right here. You can see ovarian artery, uterine artery. Okay, right here. Let's keep scrolling down. The vagina, which is a tube that is going to help the deposit of semen, the passageway for the baby, as well as the discharge of the menstrual period. So we keep scrolling down. External genitalia, we already mentioned. We have the clitoris, labia majora, labia minora, mons pubis. Okay. And in here, they are showing you that we have glands. In the case of males, we have prostate, for example. Males have prostate. Females have other glands, such as the greater vestibular gland right here, and the paraurethral gland. They also have other names, such as the Skinner gland and the Bartholin gland. And these glands are going to moisten the labia majora, labia minora, the external areas of the female reproductive system during sexual intercourse. As I was telling you, here's the other names: skin glands and Bartholin glands. Okay, so we keep scrolling down. The breast and mammary glands, in addition to the areola and nipple, inside the mammary glands, we're going to have lobes and lobules where the milk is going to be produced. And obviously, they're going to come out through the nipple because you're going to see lactiferous ducts, these ones, as well as lactiferous sinuses. In addition to that, the breast contains a lot of fat, and it also contains a ligament that helps maintain the breast in place, as you can see here, suspensory ligament. Okay, so we keep scrolling down. That's the same figure with a nipple, it's just a different cut. And we keep scrolling down. Breast cancer is very important for females to be aware of it and to have the breast check to avoid problems with cancer. And if we keep scrolling down, that's about it for this part. The next topic is puberty and menopause, and these are the changes that happens in the female reproductive system due to the presence or absence of hormones. In the case of puberty, is when there is a peak in hormones, in particular estrogen and progesterone, that are going to make these changes in the female reproductive system that are going to be displayed, especially when the female reaches puberty. First changes are going to be telarchy, which is enlargement of the breast; puberty, which is the appearance of pubic hair; and then the last one is going to be menarche, which is the first menstrual period. And again, as I said, basically because of the presence of hormones. Menopause is because of the absence of hormones, in particular estrogen and progesterone. And this happens more or less when the females are like 40 to 50 years old. One special characteristic is this one right here, hot flashes. Right, the hot flashes are because of changes in these hormones produce changes in the vasodilation and constriction of blood vessels. Okay, so let's keep scrolling down. And that's about it for this part. The next topic is oogenesis and the sexual cycle. Oogenesis is the formation of the ovules. And regarding sexual cycle, it's what happens with the female reproductive system, through the lifetime of the female. In that case, it can happen two things. Either the female is pregnant or the female is not pregnant. In case that the female is pregnant, that's what we call the reproductive cycle. And when the female is not pregnant, it's called the sexual cycle. Every month that the female is not pregnant, there are changes that are going to happen at the level of the ovaries, and that is called the ovarian cycle. And there are also changes at the level of the uterus, and that's going to be called the menstrual cycle. Okay, if we scroll down, we see oogenesis. Oogenesis is the formation of ovules through meiosis, in which we produce a haploid gamete, meaning it has 23 chromosomes instead of 46. So we scroll down, we can see this figure right here. And in there, you can see these cells called oogonia. Oogonia is the group of cells when the baby is developing inside the uterus of the mom. These cells are present more or less 7 to 8 weeks in development. These cells are responsible for producing the babies later on. These cells are going to be approximately like 4 million. These cells are going to produce primary oocytes. Primary oocytes are the ones that the baby is going to be born with. Out of these 4 million, only 2 million remain as a primary oocyte. The other ones disappear and they die. This primary oocyte remains like that until puberty. However, you need to be aware that these cells are not alone. You can see here, you see they are the same thing here, orange and blue, because these cells are actually surrounded by these cells right here. These cells are called follicular cells. So then, what happens when the baby is born? The baby is born with a whole bunch of follicular cells. And these follicular cells have inside the primary oocyte. This happens when the baby is born. Again, 5 to 6 weeks inside the mom's uterus, and 4 million oogonia. How many primordial follicles are available when the baby is born? 2 million. These 2 million remain like that until the baby reaches puberty. or adolescence, where there's an increase in hormones. In that case, the primordial follicle turns into a primary follicle. So the girl is going to have a menstrual period. So the menstrual period, usually we use 28 to 30 days. Let's say 28 days. So then day 0 is going to be the primordial follicle. From day 0 to day 5, it turns into a primary follicle. From day 5 to day 10, it turns into a secondary follicle. From day 10 to day 14, it turns into a tertiary follicle. And in day 15, you have ovulation. The ovule goes to the fallopian tube and then into the ovaries. And these cells, the ones that surround, turns into the corpus albicans. So let's do this again. This is during a month. Day 0 to day 5, primordial follicle. Day 5 to day 10, secondary follicle. Day 10 to day 14, tertiary follicle. Day 15, ovulation. After that, these cells are going to turn into the corpus luteum. So this is 14 days. This one is day 15. And this one more or less day 20, corpus luteum. Then it turns into a corpus albicans, where it's going to start degenerating. That's day 25, and then the menstrual period happens. These 3 steps, day 14, is called the follicular phase in the ovary. This is ovulation, and this is the luteal phase from basically day, we can say 18 until the end of the month. This is what happens with the with the cells. As you can see here, we have in here granulosal cells, but then granulosal cells are going to turn also into theca follicula, and you're going to have zona pellucida. Then it's going to keep growing, and you're going to have the antrum, right? And you're going to have theca internal, theca external. These cells are going to start producing estrogens, okay? And then this happens within the first 14 days. These 14 days, we call this follicular phase of the ovarian cycle. What happens in day 15? Ovulation. What happens day 18 until the end of the month? The luteal phase, which is when we have the corpus luteum. That's what happens with these cells. What happens with the oocytes? The oocytes, we said, is going to be primary follicle, but then during the first 15 days, all this period, the primary oocyte is going to go through meiosis, and through meiosis 1 is going to produce the secondary oocyte and the first polar body. This is necessary so you can get a haploid cell, meaning containing only 23 chromosomes. So it continues like that. There's not that many changes until ovulation. So basically this moment right here, this is the same thing as this. So then once it's ovulated, there are 2 options. If this ovule is not fertilized, it continues and stays in the uterus until the end of the month. And if there's no pregnancy, there's no fertilization, then this will get eliminated through the menstrual period. What happens if this ovule gets fertilized? Then the ovule, now with the spermatozoid, going to continue and is going to finish meiosis 2, and is going to produce second polar body. And this cell now is going to be the zygote that eventually is going to be the baby. If we scroll down, we can see in the folliculogenesis, we said primordial follicles are going to turn into primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, mature follicle that eventually is going to ovulate. The sexual cycle, we said it is divided into the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. Ovarian cycle, we said first 14 days, follicular phase. Day 15 is ovulation, and after ovulation, we're going to see luteal phase. Right here, you have a nice graph where you can see all those relations. You can see here day 1 to day 14 approximately, follicular phase, right, where you have the primary follicle, secondary, tertiary follicle. Day 15 is ovulation. After that, I told you more or less day 18 to 20, you'll get the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum continues until day 25, more or less, where the corpus luteum begins to die and turns into the corpus albicans. Once the corpus albicans dies, then the whole process starts again. This is what happens only in the ovaries, and this is controlled by the different hormones that females have. Here you have estrogen and progesterone, and you see the relationship between progesterone and the luteal phase, and estrogen and the follicular phase.